So these are actually examples from previous classes. So same thing that we were doing, right? Here's a tree line down at the bottom, light blue, and you just kind of listen to me. You just kind of add some color in while you're painting here. But we'll go over a few here. This one, has a really nice bloom here, which usually, of course, happens by accident, right? So this got pink and purple and yellow down here, and the yellow kind of pushed into the purple as it was drying. So those are the really lucky ones when you get a really amazing sunset look.
Excuse me, Ginny, for those two, did you wet they look like you wet the paper, is that correct?
Yes, this one would have been wet. This one, it looks, actually, I usually start off wet, and then this has a few layers of a drier color. Let's look at a few more. Let's see if we can move in a bit. Yes. Okay, so here's another one with a kind of a pink sky. We can start to put in a few little trees. We'll do that today. But, clouds can be like extremely abstract, right? You don't have to put in every single little detail. These, we got some nice giant ones here.
That one with a bead line.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I would have painted around this. After this color went on first, and then I darkened it after it had dried with another layer of color. Okay. So I kind of go back and forth, right? Here's one that was, that is just wet, right? Mm-hmm. No detail or anything, but kind of a, pretty sky with a little bit of blooming. And look, I managed to get a church steeple in there by accident, I think. But this is all wet too in the foreground, right? It's very fuzzy. So, watercolor, you can get this really great look where everything's kind of out of focus. So that's a really fun one. This is something we can do a little further on. We'll do, we've got a sky and we'll do some reflections. So I'll save that one. Right, here are our pieces from last week. So all wet, very wet. Not very wet, excuse me, because there's no blooms in here. So I was able to put this color down while it was almost dry. And that's why everything kind of stayed separate. Right, but the difference between these two is, all these clouds were done dry, right? We started off with a wet wash, and then when things dried, we added this, layer of sharper color. So that's how that works. Oh, I hope my video is recording here. Okay, so we've got this guy with the kind of weird thing in the sky. I think this one is my favorite, the dark blue clouds. And the blooms, happened kind of by accident, and they work okay. They're all right. So this one, by doing that yellow first and then being careful, to kind of paint around the yellow. All right, I've got a hard edge on that blue coming around because we put that in after. Mm-hmm. But that's the only way to really keep that yellow nice and bright, These are some, just all wet skies. Wet on wet, a couple blooms. And this I started to put in some trees, but it was wet still, so they're fuzzy. Right. There's all of our stuff. This is a nice one too. Let me show you these. This is, I don't usually paint this loose, right? This is a wet on wet technique, obviously. And everything kind of gets put in at the same time. So you end up with a lot of blooms, and kind of are able to create some trees and things with just the water moving. It's very fun and quite abstract, and it can be a neat way to do things because they're simpler, right? You're just adding a little bit of bands of color, and they're kind of mixing as you go. So let me see. I think we got a couple more here. These are some, right? This one's a little more detailed. I can see I've gone back a few times to do that. This is another one that's very wet. This was some ultramarine in here, and the texture just makes this so interesting. And here's another little one that's, just got the clouds put on after we put the background on. This one is one of my favorites. This is Winslow Homer, and it's a really great lesson for, working on trees. So I think that might be something that we could try this week. This is one that this is my forgery. And it's really fun to kind of look and sort of paint with the same kind of colors that someone else has, chosen, and also with their style, right? Their technique, because you learn a lot that way, I find. So hopefully we can work on that. I love this one too. I hadn't seen this before. And I love how, simple this is, right? You're just seeing a little bit of silhouettes of things, but we've got this incredible reflection here. And, he was a great one for painting the Adirondacks. Okay, I'm going to move my paint over so you can see that too. And I've got this Payne's Gray on here. What I want to do is just some trees in kind of silhouette, right? We'll see if we can do kind of a more detailed ridge line. So let me show you some thoughts here. So I'm going to just sort of paint a line across. And I'm using the big round brush. So if I want, right, I'm going to maybe take a little water out of this so that I can make these a little easier. But I'm going to virtually hold my paintbrush straight up and down, and I'm going to try and do a few little straight lines. Right, and then I'm going to, using the same paintbrush, I'm going to kind of just scribble across the paper here. And I need my trees to be, smaller at the top and wider at the bottom. One way you can even do them all on one side and then do the other side. This is just a little like shortcut in how to do a tree, right? Everybody draws trees or paints them a little differently, and this is something that I've kind of found helpful, to put the trunk on first, and then just kind of drop some things. What I mean is just paint some little dashes here. What I'm trying to show is that I don't want them to go straight across. It's much more, I need them to be a little bit more irregular.
So, can you tell us how you're doing it irregular? Because mine are all straight across.
That's okay. Yeah, so let's see, right? If we're doing them all straight across, the thing is we don't want them all to be evenly spaced, right? We need some branches to fill in. And, you know, sometimes it's easier to go just from the trunk and kind of pull your paint out and then do the other side. And you end up with something that's not the same on either side, right? So that's helpful. All right, let's see. Let me do another one here. Let's try this way. All right, so there's my line going up. And if I do, you know, I'm going to start smaller at the top and get wider down at the bottom. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. You can see I've got a very wet brush though. These are quite shiny. So I'm holding I've got a lot of water on my brush, but my paper is dry, so it's not, let me see. You know, it's not going to drip. But I'm also going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit more water. I can, you know, if you've got them and they're a little too sparse, right? They don't have enough branches, you know, keep adding branches. That's okay. So for me, it's easier to do the line straight up. You know, you can start at the bottom. You can zigzag it, right? Do a little zigzag, can work. You just want to get a little smaller at the top. You know, and this is a, what is the word? You know, a stylized version of the trees, right? It's not like we're trying to draw every branch. It's hard. It's hard to get the tree, you know, thin at the top. So this is something that you can also practice with. You can add a little extra water. You don't want the trunk to show up, right? If I let this dry, if I do my tree and you know, let them dry before I go back, I'll end up with a really dark line in the middle, so I'll be able to see the trunk. So I don't want that to happen. But I can come back and forth here. All right, it's hard. It's hard to get it small at the top. You know. And every once in a while you end up with a cell phone tower instead of a tree, right? So that's okay. But we also have another brush. We've got that flat angled brush. So it can also do trees, and they come out a little bit different. They're a little more stylized, but I can still get now let's go back up. I mean, you know, you can pull down too, right? You don't have to paint up, you can pull down. But this, right, we know this brush holds a little less water. But, so we'll get something maybe a little more, more stylized, a little more angular. So I'm just, you can even you know, tap it on the paper. And often, you know, if we look at a real tree, the branches actually go up sometimes rather than straight across. Oh, now see, I've got to add more here. Get my tree. You know, now I'm just using the very tip of the brush. I don't want the trunk to show, so I kind of go back and hide the trunk a little bit. You don't always want to see that.
What are you doing to hide the trunk?
If I see it too much, I'm going to come in and just add a little extra paint in the middle. Right? Our tree, you know, it's not a flat tree. It's more full in the center because it's, you know, circular, right? So we've got branches in the front as well. So I'm going to come back. I can come back in and add another set in the front. So let's see. But this is, you know, something to practice. I have some tree examples I will send to you. Tree reference. And you know, you can do more. What is kind of fun is, you know, you can work on a ridge line. Oops, kind of put some of these in. Kind of putting those all together. Ooh, slow. And they are, whoop. Here's a little green here. So I'm going to draw my kind of ridge line. And, you know, I'm going to try and put in some, gosh, it's the same shape as the clouds, right? And this is, you know, some trees, deciduous trees, right, way in the back. So just a big clump of trees. You know, I can also come in and you know, add one or two, you know, pine trees as well. So what we're doing is we're simplifying, right? We're doing a very kind of stylized thing. Here's a little leaf green. Right? It's a very light color. It's got a little white in it. So if I kind of drop that on there, and I mean just barely touch the paper, I can, you know, get a little more interesting color in that, and maybe some blooms and things like that. Very, you know, this is very similar to you know, this sort of Adirondack thing here. So I'm not going to worry about the reflection right now, but let's see if I can, you know, if we break this apart, right, we can look and see that the background is the lightest color. And after that dried, he put on another layer, and then one or two more, and then this was the last layer. So that might be something we could even, let's give it a try. It doesn't have to be the same color, but this, let me see, I'm mixing a little burnt sienna here, right? So if you still have room, keep going. I think I only want to do a little one. Here, let me see, I'm just going to do a small version here. I'm not going to tape anything down. I'm just going to make it simple here. My yellow. I've got a little burnt sienna here, very thin, and a little bit of yellow. It's not the same as what was there, but it's just going to be my background color. And of course, if I start now I'm gonna, right, everything will be, it's gonna move too much. Let's see, I'm gonna take a little, I'm gonna add a little blue to my burnt sienna. But this will tell you, you know, if we try it right now, you can see everything's moving too fast. So I need to wait if I want to try and have any detail there. Right? Even if I take the water out of my brush, my paper's too wet. Here, let's see if we can, let's try it. We'll fan it a bit. Keep trying, yeah. No, it's still too wet. Maybe ours is just going to be a little bit more out of focus than his was. I'm still using the burnt sienna. I've just mixed a little bit of blue into it, a little bit of blue. So I've just kind of changed the color a little. But this is, you know, still pretty wet. But it's kind of working. So I'll keep at it. What I do is just kind of keep mixing little, you know, puddles of color. So here's my burnt sienna. I can even, I'm going to use the same, I could use the bluish gray that we used for the trees. And I'm mixing that up. So the background's still pretty, you know, really wet. So if I want something to be sharp, I have to wait. So we just always just keep trying it. And we've got to let it evaporate a little bit more. Still very, very wet. So this is where the patience comes in, but of course we're not having it today. It's no patience. We're just trying to pretend here. You know, each time I add a layer, I want to sort of darken things as they come closer to me. Right? This now where it's a little bit better. So I'm going to paint a little island here. But you know, it's very wet. We don't have a lot of control over everything, but we're still, you know, going to end up with something that looks kind of like an island in the fog. Maybe we'll try and fill this in a little bit. So a lot of the time I'm painting with just the very tip of the brush. And if I start to lose my color, I've got to mix more up, and that happens a lot. I'm always kind of remixing things, and it's okay if it's not exactly the same. It's that will make it sometimes more interesting. Still, this is a little too blue. Put my red in there. All right, let's try it. Yeah, we'll do it. Let's do another version where it's dry in between, and I'll show you. We'll show you the difference here. Right, here's our little island. The background, very wet. So very foggy day on the lake here. I mean, you can see it's just a puddle of color, basically. And if I want, I can add a little, no, too wet still. Here's my purple. Okay. If it's very wet, we can do the same thing that we were doing with clouds. Just touching the surface and adding extra color to it. Filling in a little bit. You know, and I can, you know, I can even start to do my little tree, you know, detail, although it's still really wet. I'm gonna try the same thing once more, but we'll do it in different colors this time. All right, so here's a little, gosh, I'm just using what's on my palette. It's gonna be gray, grayish. This time I'm gonna put this on and let it dry before I try to put anything else on. There's my background color. So that one I'm gonna wait on for a bit and let it dry out first. I wonder, we haven't tried the big flat yet. So let's see how that goes. Let's try that brush. I'm gonna mix a little Prussian blue maybe. So we want to use, you know, the white of the paper for things, right? When, you know, here's our Prussian blue kind of right out of the palette, which is too dark if I'm trying to do this background here, right? It might be okay for this section. But I have to add some water to it. So I'm going to take my brush and add more water to my palette. And that's going to dilute this. So now I have a very light gray. So it's all about using the white of the paper, right? You know, if you're trying to paint some, you know, a pink rose, you're going to dilute your red. Right, here's our alizarin crimson, and you know, we don't mix white in, we just add water. So the water kind of acts as, you know, kind of creating the lighter color. And that's right. So if something's too dark, you need to add more water to it. In a puddle on your palette, not necessarily on the paper. So, right, this is, let's see. Okay. So I've got a little bit of Payne's gray in here. So I can actually go right across and kind of paint the mountain. I got to be careful because it's pretty dry. So I can bring this down. Maybe this is where we'll have the lake start. And, you know, before this starts to really dry, I'm going to add a little bit more. And I'm going to take this flat brush and sort of make some trees this way. And I can see that that's almost identical to how he did it. So this is, we're doing a reverse engineering on Winslow Homer here. All right, so there we've got a ridge line or mountain. And, you know, and if you mess up, just make another mountain, whatever. Right, but we're trying to create some trees way in the back. I've got to let this dry. Let's get it a little more even. But, you know, and I can even angle my flat brush, maybe make them a little more kind of a cone shape, like a triangle. Right? All right. And let's try this one again. Okay. want to try and show. Oops. I actually haven't added any color to my paint here. I think I can use the same paint because I'll be painting, you know, this will be a second layer here. So that's going to be automatically darker because I'm adding a second wash on top of this. So I can stop here, or I could, you know, if we're gonna, I could go all the way across. I'm not gonna see this because we're gonna put that little island in. You know, you just want to make sure when you're putting your brush down that you're, you know, it helps to be kind of deliberate, right? Sort of really intend to make some trees there. That's hard for me. Usually I just kind of skip around and, you know, see what I get when I'm finished. Okay, there's a few more over on this side. This is actually a little bit darker, this guy. So these are maybe the ones back here. And if it's a little too dark, I can add a little water. Okay, and that will thin it out a little bit. I'm going to want to dry it again now. And this is quite wet. You can see I got a big gully down here. Kind of moving back and forth.